It's ridiculous. I'm recording now, but we can just be normal for a bit. Ah, dear. Cool. So I've got to think. We're number 4 now, I think. Yeah. So welcome everybody to our 4th podcast or video, depending on how you're kind of engaging with us here. And we've been looking at children's, youth and families kind of matters and subjects and discussions, and hearing from people from across our association to hear what they have to say. And today I'm really excited because we've got Chris Walker, who's going to, I'll allow you, Chris, to sort of chat a bit about yourself and your context, but he's here and he's going to be sharing about developing younger leaders. So we're really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. So Chris, can you just tell us about your context and where you are, who you are, that kind of thing?
I'm Chris. I'm from, I work at Eastleigh Baptist Church as the Youth and Children's Minister, and I've been here about 14 years now. So seeing the work, grow and develop and change and shift, and for many years now. I don't know if people know much about Eastleigh. It's not far from Southampton, so it's a town sort of place rather than a city sort of place.
Cool. And you're one of our youth specialists, aren't you? The rare breed of youth specialist Baptist ministers. So can you tell us, where did you do your training?
So I did it with CYM at Bristol, which was fantastic. You know, if I'm truly honest, I didn't go into it with the best attitude, thinking I knew it all. But it was honestly the best experience of my life, and it's so drastically impacted all that I do. It was fantastic. Brilliant.
Cool. And I'm a youth specialist and I love meeting other youth specialists because you sometimes have a really kind of a different outlook and a different slant on how Baptist ministry can be. So I always find that really interesting. Maybe that should be another podcast at another time. But for this one, we're looking at developing younger leaders. And I was wondering what that's looked like for you in your context.
So I mean, there's loads of things we do. I mean, the danger of all these podcasts and things is that you come across as you've got it all sorted. By no stretch is that the case. But you know, I think probably the main thing is really simple, is opportunity. So we try and provide lots of opportunities for our young people to lead. And you know, one of our key sort of training grounds is we have 2 Bible study groups in the week, and one for the younger ones, one for the older ones. And often, you know, the younger one will then develop into the older one. We don't need to go into all of that. But when we start the younger one, it starts off as you might expect with a Bible study. The leaders choose the topics. They then facilitate, lead the session, lead the games, the activities, all that sort of stuff. But like within the first half term, we try and move away from that model into the young people picking the topics. And again, the leaders will lead and all that sort of thing. But then very swiftly after that, we start sort of saying, okay, you've chosen the topics, why don't you take one of those topics? And we encourage each of the young people to lead the study, to do the research, to, you know, we support them, we give them the material, we help them work it through. But basically we give them the opportunity to lead each other in that moment. And, you know, the leaders are still there to facilitate, to kind of, you know, if things start sort of drifting off track, to help bring it back. So they support them in that kind of peer leadership. But it's our main training ground. And so it's from the very beginning, they expect to lead, and they expect to be asked to lead. And it's great because by the time they get to the older group, as a leader, I'm leading like 1 in 6, because they're all, you know, they're leading, they're discovering the stuff in the Bible themselves. They're sharing it with each other, they're leading each other. And that is one of our sort of main training grounds for leadership, and it provides opportunity and expectation that this is, you know, something they can do and will be asked to do. And, you know, as a church, we have, you know, loads of other opportunities to lead. So, you know, we do have, you know, we anticipate, and there is an anticipation or expectation in our church that our young people will lead things like worship, that they will lead prayers, that they have their own youth service, but they're not confined to that one service. You know, we have youth-led services and child-led services, and these aren't, you know, I wouldn't say they're regular, but there's an expectation from the church that these things occur, and, you know, they ask for them. You know, our church asks our young people to lead prayer meetings. I mean, at the moment, if I'm honest, our young people are not wanting to jump on Zoom with a load of adults to lead them. But that's, that's just the nature of what it is at the moment. But there's the expectation and the opportunity. And I think those are the key things.
Well, I love that. So you talked about in terms of how enabling participation really early on, and then that participation actually evolves into leading, and the openness of your church to receive leadership from those that are younger than them seems to be really key. How did you go about kind of cultivating that sort of culture? Because there's not every church is open to that sort of participation or leadership. It can sometimes be a bit tokenistic in that oh, isn't it wonderful to see the young people up front? It makes us all feel fuzzy and good about ourselves. And but actually, how can it genuinely actually they're open to the Spirit at work through the young people in that way? Can you say a little bit about how you develop that sort of culture?
Yeah, again, we're not all the way there. There is still some kind of attitude towards sort of tokenism sort of thing, but we, in some ways, we named it at the beginning, when we started providing those opportunities for our young people to lead in those ways. We did sort of point out at the outset, don't clap, like this isn't a performance. These guys are leading you in worship. And so, I know you want to encourage them, in which case go after them and tell them, what really touched you, what helped. But, don't treat it in that way. So we just sort of named that straight out. But yeah, I think one of the key things, and this is really personal for me, that changed my way I develop young leaders, and I think it then bled in and helped create that culture, was something I heard at a global leadership summit a few years ago, where this guy, much more eloquently than I'm going to say it now, sort of got up and sort of said, if you go to something and you don't take a young leader with you, you've missed an opportunity to develop them. And that really struck me, that if I don't take someone with me when I go and do something, then I've missed an opportunity to develop them. And so now if I go and do sort of training, I'll take a young person with me. And they won't necessarily be involved in the training, but afterwards I'll be like, okay, what did I do well? What did I not do well? How did that session go? What would you have done differently? And all those questions are really easy to have because they were there, they experienced something alongside. A few years ago, I was asked to do a summer camp, to speak at a summer camp, just a local one. And I thought, this is lovely, it's great, it's really nice to be asked. And I thought, actually, I'm going to take some young leaders with me. And so, I took these 5 young leaders and we worked on developing the material together and delivering the material together. And it was a lot more work than if I'd just done it myself. But it was then really, it was really great to be able to see them grow in their leadership. And, it was such a simple opportunity that I would have missed if I hadn't have been developed into that. But I think that's the case. Then, whenever I do anything, I try and remember to bring a young person with me. So the church begin to see our young people being taken along to these things, doing these things, and, exploring these things with others. And I think, and I hope, it's sort of moved into our leadership structure to a certain extent, in that, we're trying to move more and more to a model of, when we're leading something, we're looking and going, who am I developing? Who am I bringing with me in this? Yes, it's about succession to a certain extent, but also, what is that leader bringing right now? Not that I'm the be all and end all, but, they have their own skills, their gifts, but also, who am I bringing with me in this journey? And so those things have kind of helped, I think, develop this sort of culture of we expect to see young leaders alongside and being and exercising leadership.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. Are there any stories? So, like, what's the feedback from the young people being like? Do they recognize that they've been invested in this way?
That's a good question. I've never really asked if they have. They definitely, the being asked to go along to something is always a big thing, a big self-esteem boost. Like, I've been asked, and you obviously have to be careful not to just pick the same ones over and over. But I've been asked to go and do this with. That's a real kind of boost to their esteem. And And I don't know, I'd be good to ask them. I mean, you know, of those 5 that I took on the thing, 2 of them are in leadership in our church now, and the others are leading elsewhere. And so it'd be interesting to ask them whether they realise that they were being invested in, or whether they thought they were just carrying boxes or stuff.
Well, no, but it shows the fruit of what you've done in terms of actually saying that actually there's leadership within church and also outside of church. That they have kind of been able to develop those kind of skills, and you've obviously probably character and all that kind of thing as well, which is really kind of interesting. Do you kind of differentiate, or how do you handle the whole thing around leadership within church? But actually, just we want to develop good, godly leaders in all walks of life, don't we? Not just within our churches, but within the businesses and whatever areas they may kind of find themselves in at a future time, or even within school. Obviously, they could be a leader within their school. How would you sort of tease those differences out, or do you not really see it as a different?
I think it's more around, as you say, character. So that those things, it's about, you know, what, you know, having the conversations and developing character things. Because okay, there is you know, difference in style of leadership perhaps in those different places, but it's also recognizing what style of leadership is required in that moment, and things like that. So those are the ways I think we sort of deal with that.
Yeah, okay. So, and with the kind of character stuff, how do you help with that formational stuff, or the inputting around someone's character and what it means to be a godly leader? Are there resources that you've drawn on, or is there just been a particular thing you do, or is it just something that happens in terms of the way that you relate to them? How do you sort of kind of highlight that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot about the kind of how you relate and the analysis. I think a lot of it is around you know, analyzing what worked, what didn't, and drawing from, you know, what's going on around the world at the time. You know, we've had a lot of discussion around leadership when we look at some world leaders, especially in the last few years, and you know, what character traits we expect in leaders. And so it's more informal in that sense, through conversation, through looking at other leaders, looking at our own leadership and recognizing those issues, and those things happen at the end of sessions as we, you know, move between things, you know, as we have those conversations.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. I mean, I've seen how you've related to is it John that worked with you for quite a time, wasn't it? And it was, and you brought him along and you encouraged him, and it was really, so I've kind of seen you in action with how you've you walk with someone in terms of developing their leadership, their calling and their character, so that it's been really wonderful to see. And what sort of advice would you give to churches where they're like sort of saying, oh my gosh, I've realized that we've just kind of done to the young people, we've done everything for them, we do the program for them, we do all the delivery for them, and they just come and they consume everything that we kind of put on, and when they don't turn up we feel bad, and it's like, and it's been much more that sort of model. What would your advice be in how we can help make it more about actually developing them as leaders by giving them opportunities to participate and all that kind of thing? Any sort of top tips?
Well, first of all, I'd want to say, you know, that they're still doing amazing work. You know, it's not you know, it's not tears or anything. You know, those young people undoubtedly will have gained a lot from whatever they're doing, but yeah, it's just that participation, just encouraging them, you know, just asking questions. What would you like to study? What are you interested in? And then immediately, honestly, they very rarely know. And so, you know, when we first start out, they're like, I don't know, you're supposed to tell me what to do. No, okay, so what's interesting you at the moment? You know, we've done a number of studies on Among Us, you know, but out of that sort of, so they say we want to do something about Among Us, and so you're okay, well, you know, actually, what does that fit with what we've already done before? You know, yeah, there's stuff around kind of peer pressure, around friendship, around you know, being suspicious, or, you know, of people, and cynicism, you know, those things that we probably would do anyway. So it's in those moments, it was just creating and finding those touching points. But yeah, my advice would just be, you know, just ask them and just help them develop what they want to explore, what they want to look at through conversation. Yeah, like I say, it takes a while before, now they come to the first session of the term and they're like, right, we want to do this, want to do this, want to do this. But it took us a long time to get there, teasing out what exactly they were trying to describe.
And actually, if they've not been used to being asked, there is that silence, isn't it? Because in terms of they don't know, they might still think that there's a right answer that needs to be coming up with. So to have that confidence to kind of share that. But I love that. I sometimes talk about, like, the stories of your young people, so know what they're interested in, know what their context is, because that's the touching points that you mentioned. That's how you get to find out, and that draws them in, and you've got a starting point for a place of participation, haven't you? So that's great. So the participation, know the stories, know the context, create those touching points, and then how is it about something about kind of letting go of control? Because often it gives us a bit of comfort when we're in control, maybe, I don't know, for some people, just knowing that, but actually, I mean, it's quite scary, isn't it? Having to let go to allow a young person to kind of fly. I always think of it as like watching your kid in a assembly or something, or a school play, and you're out of control, but you're like thinking, oh my gosh, I hope they do okay. And how do you do with that, like kind of that element of control and letting go? Do you find that easy, or?
I don't find it too difficult. I think because I feel like, for me, a lot of people, especially previous ministers of our church have done that for me, have been my safety net. So I know that I can give this a go, because at the end of the day, they will be there. If it all goes wrong, they will help me work it through. And I think that's what I love to be for those young people. Obviously, God is the ultimate safety. He's with us all the time. I'm not in any way putting myself in there. But if they're leading a session and you can see it's not going as they wanted, we can use the skills that we have to facilitate it, to draw attention away, if it's all going a bit pear-shaped. And I think that gives the young people confidence that they're not alone in this. They're leading, but they're not alone. So while in most ways we've given up control, you're there to facilitate. So you are there to support, and so you've not lost control. You've given it, and that's the thing. I think you've given it away, and you can take it back if you need to in that moment. But you've gifted it to that young person, and it's great to see what they're going to do with it.
I know, that's a really lovely way of putting it. But as you were talking, it brought to mind, I did a service with young people, and I've done services where I just totally let them free rein with it, which is wonderful. But this was one where we were doing this joint effort, and they were all a bit nervous, and I was like, don't worry, what could possibly go wrong? And I'm not joking you, every single thing went wrong. And afterwards they were going, Claire, you told us what could possibly go wrong. And I was like, we were just modelling what it means to kind of fail dramatically in front of a lot of people. I couldn't believe it was the sound, the organ had a different song, but I was just like...
But this is the other thing, is like giving the space to fail. It's so important and so helpful. Our young people, they do serve, let's say, in front of the church and stuff, and they know that they can get it a bit wrong, and the church will still say, well done, and they'll still support them and thank them, and it's that kind of forgiving culture, and that place where you can fail.
So important, because speaking in front of people is really hard, isn't it? I can maybe feel like praying out loud for the first time was like a real big deal. And actually just I always say to people, this isn't your one and only chance. You haven't got to get it completely right on this moment, and then we're never going to ask you to do something again, because actually we all need a chance to get better, don't we? And the church is the practice ground for a lot of our young people, in terms of when they're trying out leadership and what that looks like. So I think that's that's another good tip. Allow them to fail, and don't let it be like a one-off chance at doing something. They must be allowed to have other chances, and you never... And I always think, like, I always take any blame, not that the church would necessarily do that, but I mean, I take responsibility for that and protect them from that, really, because that's only... And then you can... And I also hate I remember being 16, my first time up front, and I was doing all I had to do was say, name the collection. Like, we're going to now do the collection. And I did it before the organ had finished. And then I spoke really fast, and this person sat next to me in all good, good intention, basically explained to me all the things that I'd done wrong. And and then someone else just said, just ignore everything that he's just said, because you just can't handle that at that age when you've just made yourself feel quite vulnerable, And so I think it's about leaving maybe some of the critical feedback to those that know them best, so that they can feed it back in a way where it is from a relational point of view rather than a performance kind of point of view. So I hope I haven't waffled there, but I was just
no. I mean, it's exactly right, because you do want to give them that feedback to help them grow. But yeah, it's leaving it to the people. And I think it's one of the things that I do say to young people when they go to do something. It's like, if it all goes wrong, it's my fault, not yours. And that gives them the confidence to do some of these things, I think.
Oh no, it's great. And have you got any for your sort of thinking like forward? Are there things that you would do differently, or how are you hoping to continue to grow? What are some of the sort of future thoughts for you? Like, say, actually, we need to do this a little bit better, or is there any? Or there might not be anything, and that's absolutely fine as well.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest. Not that we've got it all right. I think there definitely could be more opportunity to do things in the actual sort of leadership team sort of area. So I have seen models of leadership development for young people, where they take that you have your sort of leadership team diaconate, and they deal with all these various issues that team deal with, and then they also encourage the second sort of youth leadership team to engage with some of the same issues. I think where that model has some drawbacks is that it's all about these young people can lead in the future, whereas actually they can lead right now, and so I think there's some work we could do around involving our young people better in some of the bigger conversations that our leadership team deal with, but with their input being given now, with their leadership being expressed and given now, rather than just you're practicing for when you're them. So that's something I think we could do better, is involving them more in the bigger conversations. I mean, we try to, but it's not as effective as I'd like at the moment.
Yeah, and I really love that. And I think another challenge of those sort of models where they just have like a younger version of what the adults are doing, it's putting adult structures which maybe need to be challenged onto young people, whereas actually maybe there's a whole new way of doing something, but we just replicate the same structure, where maybe actually the structures need changing. I think there's some, but it's really great to be thinking, well, how do we enable that genuine participation at the decision-making level, or what that might be. I think our time might be running away with us, Chris, but that's been absolutely wonderful, and we're going to pause now. But Omi, God bless you in all the work that you're doing, and Chris is part of our Children, Youth and Families working group or strategy group, so it's really wonderful to have his voice and his participation at that kind of level as well within SCBA. And we're going to hear from some more Children, Youth and Families workers and some ministers around how they encourage younger leaders in their kind of leadership and in developing them. So let's listen in to what they have to say.
Always great to see folk cheering on and praying for young people. It makes a massive difference when a youngster sees that not only do you notice them, but you believe in them, and God does too. Having this support and backing is so key for their development as young leaders, as is the body working together in this. And so we seek to do this by collaborating with young people. For example, we're working with them to shape and grow new provisions like a youth cafe and sports outreach. Through working together on these things, opportunities are provided for shared learning and experiences that encourage not only young leaders to develop and grow, but us too as a church.
For For me, developing young leaders all comes back to understanding the young leaders that you're trying to develop. I don't think there's any one-size-fits-all method or mould that you're trying to get them to fit into, but it's all about helping them understand their gifts, their calling, their personality and their passion, to kind of come together to figure out actually what ways is God calling them to serve as they grow into their leadership, and kind of using that gifting of who they are to understand themselves and become more Christ-like by serving others in those areas.
Developing young leaders for me is about giving young people the opportunity to explore what God's already put in them. That they've been called, that God's equipped them with gifts, with abilities, with a uniqueness. And all we need to do is allow them to tap into it and pull it out. They're amazing already, and we just need to help nurture it.
I think two thoughts strike me about developing young leaders, which is an area where I'm aware we've got a lot of work to do. But the first one is helping young people to work out what are their giftings, what are they good at, what brings them joy, where do they enjoy serving God, because we want young people to be serving out of their areas of giftings and not pigeonholed into an area of service which just doesn't fit them very well. And the second thought I have is using this really helpful little chart that I'm sure many of you have seen before, as just a really practical reminder about how to effectively help young people grow into leadership. So we lead something, they watch us. Then we lead something and they help us. Then we give them the opportunity to lead and we help them. And finally, when they're ready, they lead and we simply watch. And all along that process, we offer feedback and encouragement as we watch them grow into young leaders.